Trix, let me start with you.
Okay.
Let's take us right back to the beginning and, your inspiration for putting this together.
It was interesting because I I spent 2 years writing a film called For Queen and Country, which eventually starred Denzel Washington. And by the end of that process, I was absolutely broke. And then Channel 4 were thinking of doing a sitcom, and my name came up because Frood Dondi was one of the judges on a writers' competition that I'd won for Channel 4 called Debut 84. And up to this juncture, I've never really written comedy before. I'd done some satirical sketches at the Albany Empire, which is where I worked at the time, running a new theatre company. And but I just thought I would like to meet this legend that's called Humphrey Barclay. So I thought, okay, I'll go and meet him. I had no clear idea of what I was going to sell to him, or indeed what I was even going to say when I got there. I certainly knew that I wasn't going to come and pitch a comedy series because I didn't have one. However, on the way to the meeting, I never forget, I was on the first 6 bus, just going up High Street near Peckham, and there was a barbershop called Fair Deal. The bus drew up at the traffic lights, and I was looking down to see this barbershop. And it was about 9 o'clock in the morning. Behind the barbershop was a girls' school called Collingdale, or Collingwood, I think it was called. Collingwood Girls' School, that's what it's called. And looking at the barbershop, the guys that are working in the barbershop all had their faces pressed up against the window. The other guy was outside the door chirping the girls as they went round, And in the background, there were 3 people sitting in the barber chair, in their chairs respectively, just waiting for the barbers to continue their haircut. Some had some foam on his face, the other guy had half a shaved head. And I just thought, yeah, man, that reminded me that when I was a youth too, of just going to those barbershops that ultimately, you weren't there necessarily to get a haircut. Yes, hair is important with black people, and it always has been. And this was the only place that you could, as a black man, get a haircut, a black barber. But what was interesting was that it was that social hub. It really, they did serve rice and peas, albeit with some hair in it. They did give you, we did argue the toss about who was the best boxer in the world. We talked about the world, the politics, and everything but. And you never went in there thinking that you get out beyond 3 hours, even if you went for a number 1 haircut. And so, therefore, that's when it came to me. And when I rocked up at Humphrey Barclay's, I knew it was a kind of weird omen because I was following Emma Thompson all the way there. And she kept on looking at me thinking, who's this strange black man following me? Do you know what I mean? So I sat down and I said, look, I'd got this idea. It's set in a barbershop. And his face dropped, he goes, yeah, all right, so what's that going to be called then? Short and Curlies? And I said, no, it's just going to be called Desmond's, it's about the guy that runs the barbershop. And he says, well, so what does this Desmond do? I said, the last thing he does is cut hair because actually he's useless. He cannot cut hair. He only gives everybody one haircut style. So then I explained to him the whole, for me, the social significance of a black barber. And then he got it. He absolutely got it. And the rest, as they say, is history,
So can you talk about the first time you got involved and when you saw the script and how excited you were to be involved in this?
When I first saw the script, the first thing is that I trusted the production company who sent the script to me. That's number 1. I thought they've done some good work. I've seen the work that they've done. Comedy series and stuff like that. And I thought, yes, I must look at this seriously, this thing. I thought at the time, I don't know that I'm a comedy actress. I saw myself as a real drama queen, And so I thought, comedy. But I had already done 2 other things, which how I approached it from the point of view that only honesty could make it work. Because I could feel that that's where Trix was coming from. The honest portrayal of these people. No funny people, but just people being funny because of the situation. And so that gave me the confidence to do it, because I don't see, and still don't see myself as a comedy actress. I don't think anybody's a straight actress, comedy, drama, whatever. You either know your job and you do it to the best of your ability and you portray what you've been asked to do. all I had, the confidence came from the fact that I felt that I could honestly be this woman. And if I said, if I did the script as I felt Trix, because I hadn't met Trix Worrell before this. Oh yes, I did. When he won something. He wrote a play called Migrants, and he won. He won the what's it?
Debut 84 Channel 4 Writers Competition.
Channel 4 Writers Competition. I thought, this is the guy that won that thing. He's good. Yeah. So that's all. I had everything going. The script had everything going for it for me to take it seriously. Do you know what I mean? That this is, I would like to do this, because you're committing yourself to doing something that is important, not only because it's a comedy script, but where we were, and still in some way still there, as portrayal of black people in the society. Mm. And we were either put in the play or the whatever it was as like tokens. Some of the time there was some serious work going even before that, but the token, and I thought there's nothing that suggests tokenism in this piece. They are people in their own right, and as I heard you say one time that he didn't write it so that white people could see what black people are or could be. He says, I'm not in the business of telling white people who we are. He wrote it because of who we are. It is not about telling you or what we do, but knowing what you do and just going and doing it. And that for me was, that informed my decision to accept the piece when the script came from Humphrey Barclay Productions. I thought, yes, with a bit of trepidation. And of course I knew Norman Beaton and Ram John Holder and people like that. We'd worked together years and years before that. And that informed me. The fact that I would be amongst people who I think the same way about what we are doing. Because apart from being a comedy series, it was serious work for me. It was a serious situation. This has got to be done for any amount of reasons.
And even in that first episode, you set up so many layers to it. You know, there's Desmond wants to go back home. You know, you're reconciled to the fact that you're staying. But with your character, Robbie, you're part of a different generation. Mm-hmm. Like my dad was born in London. His parents weren't. And in that, you're immediately getting that clash setting up. And can you just talk about your character and how he's so different to the older generation?
My character. So back then, it was like us and them. It was the older generation, and then there was us just kind of messing about. And what was really difficult for me at the time, I got called in to meet Humphrey and Charlie, and didn't know anything about the series, didn't know what they wanted to meet me for, and we sat in this meeting for about 5-10 minutes, of which it was very, very bland, very dry, very, kind of like, well, what am I doing here sort of thing. And then I was young at the time and didn't know what was going on. I was like, well, look, I'm not sure what you've called me here for, but this is what I do. So at the time I was kind of stand-up comedian stroke, poet stroke, just kind of got through life. And yeah, that's what I did. And I just kind of did things. I was a survivor. And
you were black.
Yes, I was. And what I did a little piece for Charlie and Humphrey. Did a little poem I'd written, which was a character called Nigel Smith, which was a Cockney character, and that's what got me the gig, and that's it. At the time, Norman, Carmen, Ramjohn, those guys, they were like, oh, I was like, oh, wow, God, one day I wish I could just touch you, meet you, you know what I mean? Like that. Literally, I'm being serious. Back then, we used to sit around, these are guys that, we emulate, just, mate, and I had friends, Gary McDonald, Trevor Etienne, Brian Bevell, who were fortunate enough to work with these guys, and I came along I kid you not, I was a trainee accountant for 3 years, normal bod, yeah? and got made redundant. To this day, I would still be doing accountancy if I wasn't made redundant. And all we did, I used to go to the BTC, I used to go to Riverside Studios, drama workshops at Dick Shepherd and stuff like that. And all those guys used to do was sit around, they'd talk about Norman and Carmen and their experience, and I'd be sitting there like this. Because I had nothing to add to the conversation. Hadn't met them, just I'd seen them do stuff, but you know, back then it was the Fosters and things like that, and I was like, oh mate, this is just proper dry. Every week it's the same thing, they're just talking about talk. And then I got this gig, you know, and you know, suddenly I was like, wow, golden ticket, Willy Wonka. You know, and 6 years on, you know, I was like, yeah, you want stories about Norman, come check me. You know what I mean? So
Talk to my accountant.
Talk to yeah. But it was great. It was, you know, it wasn't a job.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say this, you know, it wasn't a job.
It was a joy.
It was a proper joy. It was like, mate, you know, back then we would rehearse down at the Oval. There used to be a church there where we would rehearse in there. I don't know how we managed to stay standing because Norman used to cuss. But anyway. And we'd rehearse there, and it, you know, it was just great. It was like, these guys were working, proper working, and we was just farming the arse and being paid for it as a younger generation. And watching, you know, when I realised, you know, what it meant to you guys, you know, I was like, oh wow, it's amazing. It's like, it's cult following. It's like, you know, role models. Like, wow, it's like, oh my God. And then to see now, you know, fast forward 20 odd years and you kind of go, you know, the younger generation, you know, the generation, whatever they are, they go, oh my God, I see you in Desmond. And Desmond's like, I didn't realise. I didn't know how much it meant. It's very sad that nothing has replaced it now. But to see where it still stands and watching it there, sorry to say this, watching the madness that he wrote that still stands the test of time now, it's beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's me.
So, Ram John,
Yes.
Go on.
pork pie.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
Well, I must agree with what Carmen said. The realism of the piece really knocked me back. I mean, I was really over the moon when I read the script. The realism, because he was writing about these people, because I understood this whole society, the community. That's how we were. That's how people were, you know. And it was, Robbie talks about the fun of it too, and the humor, the comedy, and it was nice to be able to laugh at oneself, to stand up yourself and your community, and this shows you the whole total universality, the community, the broad-sided, the many-sidedness of it. We can be serious as well as we can be sad. And we can laugh at ourselves. We can have this fun. We can see the ridiculous and the sublime at the same time about our people and ourselves rather than talking about our people. And it was so human, the humanity of it. And when you see it today, you see how real and down to earth and these people are. And that's the realism of it, which really I loved and enjoyed as well, you know, and working with, of course, with Carmen and Norman and people like Robbie, a natural talent. Robbie, really marvelous performance. He was just a gift to the series as a part. And Michael and Gloria, to me, and they're coming from this so-called Cockney generation, as opposed to us old West Indians, you know, who were the so-called migrant post-war. Well, I was born during the war, you know. I was born during Nazi Germany, Hitler. I mean, I was born in the West Indies. I was born in Nazi Germany. Yeah. But then I said, oh my God.
Just for a second.
Mr. Ram.
No.
You got your headline there.
Born in the 30s, yeah? In the 30s, think of it, the 30s, my God. You're old, boy. Yes, but here we are, and it's marvelous to see Desmond's maintaining that quality and that status. And I watch a lot of television. We all watch comedy, and it's equal to anything there is. It's still the writing, the comedy, the quality, the photography, the editing, the cinematography.
And it was all there from the first episode.
It's marvelous.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was a privilege. And, at the time I was offered something else at the BBC, which I'd never, and during Desmond's, I've been offered things, but I would never have dreamt of ever leaving Desmond's, because it was such a marvelous situation comedy to work about the family, about this family, and that what I was pleased about it was that it was accessible to the whole family. It was not that after 9 o'clock watershed type of thing. It was for the family, and I always as a performer, as an actor, as an artist, you want to serve the whole community, the family, as me, but in particular. Maybe it's my Methodist background, but I wanted to serve the family. So
and that was borne out in the viewing figures, everybody, and the demographics, everybody loved it. But you wanted to jump in.
No, just saying about the family, because ultimately what happened over the course of Desmond's is that the fact that we, as people behind the actors and writers, and because we also had a team of writers towards the end, all came together and we felt like a family. It really felt like that we were doing something special because the energy that was coming to it. I was absolutely astounded when Carmen said that she was doing it. I've never been sort of almost close to tears about something, because I just admire this woman so much, and I've just seen such a lot of her work, as well as Norman's, that to have two real bedrocks there. And I never wrote Desmond's as a comedy necessarily. I brought it, all the characters born out of truth. And the other thing is that, being black, we're funny. Being black in a minority situation in dominant culture, you have to laugh, otherwise you're going to cry. And I think that's still true today. But, I think truthfulness of the characters is what, rings out and continues.
And I'm sure we've all sat on a lot of panels about diversity.
Yeah, sure.
And, ultimately what you're talking about realism, about truth and authenticity, that comes from perspective and point of view and getting the right people to tell the stories. So you don't have to send out a team of researchers to work out how Jamaicans play dominoes.
Yeah, sure.
It's just there. And I think that's really important. And I want to give you all a chance to be immodest. We know the show's hugely successful, but I just want each of you to talk about why you think it captured people so much and what you're most proud of about it. Anyone can go.
But because the characters were universal. It could have been black, white, Greek, Italian, Russian, American. The characters were. This was a family. I couldn't wait to. I want to say I really look forward to receive the scripts, reading the scripts and so on. But they are the universality of the situation, and that's why it has succeeded, because every family have this sort of debate about it. There's the gender thing, there's the age thing, right? There's the professional thing, the vocational thing, and every family has this debate, and this dialogue.
I didn't necessarily see it as a black sitcom.
Exactly.
I've got to be honest.
I agree with you.
I saw it as a sitcom.
Yeah.
I saw it as a sitcom. It stands alone there amongst all the others, and it didn't necessarily have colour.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean? It appealed to everybody. It appealed to, Martians. All creed, colour. Yeah. It appealed to absolutely, at the time when we were doing it, the people that used to come up to us and say, oh, you know what, really love it, really love it. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like one set. It was just right across the board. And that's what was really nice. That's what was really nice about it. It wasn't pigeonholed. It wasn't stereotypical. I to this day, I can remember when we hit the 5 million mark and we did a little press thing for it. And of course, again, at the time, being of that generation, to us, it was just a jolly. It's like, all right, cool. pass the champagne, nice. Do you know what I mean? Because it was just a jolly, you know. But it was never ever just a black sitcom. Do you know what I mean? It was just Desmond's barbershop.
You're right. You're damn
It was just,
right.
and it's still there. It's still on Bellenden Road. You know what I mean? And I see it every now and again. Great fond memories, but never ever colour. Always just Desmond's barbershop. Everybody could absolutely identify with what went on in that shop, outside that shop, around that shop, wherever. And,
Characters were
Yeah,
so
which was
real.
actually down to what was presented on the page. Because there was never any mention or any idea that we're these black people in Peckham or wherever it is, and this is the struggle was not about on occasions we would talk about what was happening to certain people and things, but it wasn't the driving force of the piece. It was about human beings, and the thing that came. That we lived by without it being without us being told this is what we're doing, was the respect for each other, not only as artists, but as the characters that we were playing, but as the person who was doing it. The deep respect for each other.
Yes,
and
of course.
yes, and
That too.
that for me was the force behind the thing, because even Trix, you wrote the first 4 thing or 6 or whatever.
19.
The fir-
19.
the
Oh, for
first-
the first
first
6, for the
19,
first 6, yeah.
And then we had writers, and every writer was a black person. That was one of the things that that we were very proud that we were promoting. We were giving people a chance who would not otherwise have had a chance. And on the production as well was there were people who worked behind the camera and behind the scenes who were also black people. Do you know what I mean? And but it wasn't like we didn't sort of announce that this is what we are doing. It was just happening there, and that's what I liked about it. It was there was a kind of dedication without it being heavy. We've got to do this because.
I don't
it
think
was just it was there.
we weren't
Respect.
we weren't indulging in positive discrimination.
No,
though,
no, we were doing something
but
that was
We were
worthwhile.
extending the arena, the theatre, the technique, the advantages to other
Absolutely.
people
Yeah.
in
'Cause
our
I think,
world.
you know, if
Whether their camera,
yeah,
whether
sure.
their
And I
costume,
think
whether
one of
their
those
Sound?
things for me was going back to your original question. What's my highlight moment? My biggest moment was when I realised, in terms of demographics, that more people in Ireland watched Desmond's than anywhere else in the country. So for me, that was, it was job done, because I always said this, I never wrote Desmond's for black people because we know who we are.
exactly.
I wrote it for white people, so you get to know who we are, and ultimately see that there is no difference, really.
Yes, that's right.
So the other thing is that, Desmond's and their stories and the Ambroses is a migrant story, and which is the buzzword at the moment. But good American comedy, it normally comes from a migrant populace. So that's where I drew my inspiration from, And it started to show in America on BET, and as a consequence of that, Bill Cosby, the truth, we won't go into the politics of him now, but, he was so enamoured by the show that
Yes.
he wanted Norman to be on the Cosby Show, and I went out there with him. And to see behind the scenes of how they worked, i.e. that they had 14 different writers per episode, the fact that they had writers that were just dedicated to each character. I came back with all that in my head, going to Humphrey and Charlie, man, we have to get some black people, we have to get a team, we have to, so really we started that. And from that, we won the RTS Award for Best Team Show, from the writing perspective. And so, that in itself was really one of the proudest moments. And the other one was, there was a guy called Lincoln Abrahams, and Link used to come in to the production office in his school uniform. He was about 15 at the time. And, say, I want a job. And finally, Humphrey said, look, you speak to this guy, because they used to patronise him. He's just a young kid. And I said, look, think, what do you want to do? He said, I want to do camera. So I told Humphrey that, I think, seriously, this guy's so dedicated. He keeps coming back. Now he's one of the chief guys on Strictly. He's done MTV Awards, he's done this, he's done that. He's one of the chief camera people in television to date. And that came from Desmond's too. So, so there are many things, that I think that Desmond did deliver. And I stand proudly to say that it did do that, because there are very few jobs for black people in television still. We talk about diversity. What happens then is that actually there are a lot of workshops, boxes are ticked, and really don't move on. Yeah. Recently I found out that a very well-known BMEA writer was developing a series which was, they got to about 6 episodes and then it was dropped. And you go, well, what? So behind the cameras and behind the scenes and not in front of the camera is where we try to, try to make a difference. Yeah.
And I guess something I wanted to talk about was the shortfall that followed Desmond's. In one way, it's great that it's still so loved and that we're all here today to talk about it, and it's a shining example of the form and the family and the support network that you're talking about. But the fact that nothing following it has come close to matching it in terms of what it's done, in terms of representation and employment, that's really sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's a double-edged sword. You can look at it one of two ways. One, yes, it's sad. Two, it was that good that nothing could follow it.
You should shut it down.
Do you see what I mean?
Can you drop that mic? I don't know.
It's a sad state of affairs. Speaking as an actor, as a survivor, as I like to call myself. At the time when we were doing it, it was great. Coming off the back of it, 1994 when we finished it. Was it pork pie? What was it called?
Yeah,
Pork pie.
yes,
Pork pie.
it's been on.
I didn't get a look in. I was vexed.
Don't blame me.
I was like, hold on, surely
Nothing
more
to
longevity
me.
would leave.
Yeah.
But you look at it now and you kind of go, well, for me it's more a case of why is there nothing that's followed it?
Yeah.
Good, bad or indifferent, be it up there, be it there, wherever it was placed, why has nothing followed it? Do you know what I mean? And you can ask so many questions, and at some point you want an answer.
Well, people at Channel 4 have to answer that question.
I think
Because
people
I wrote
right
them a
across-
letter suggesting why finish. Norman Beaton died. Let's get another barber in and take his place. Shirley takes over as the head of. You can even change the name to Shirley's. A long letter. I just found it the other day. I wrote to Mr. Michael Jackson or whoever at Channel 4.
Not that.
Not that one.
No,
No, it's kind of interesting because, when Desmond's finished, I, attended several meetings where people wanted, across the board, BBC particularly, who basically said, what we want from you, Trix, is another Desmond's, And I'm saying, well, actually, this is backward thinking. We should be being a bit more progressive than that. Desmond's was its own entity, and actually Channel 4 was the right home for it. I'm here talking to you. You're a different caliber. You're, and so therefore we should be talking about a new show that would be a BBC show, not trying to hark back at something that had gone, and should remain so. That doesn't necessarily mean that I wouldn't want to do another Desmond's. I think that would be a wonderful thing. I think all the issues that were raised in the first one are still there. I think, new generations and the sort of, the hipster brigade come, the gentrification of London come, young people can't even leave home anymore. All these things are there. And I think there's a lot of humour in life because of that. So, I think to answer you, right, John, that'd be good.
But you see, the thing is, what would follow? You have to have the same alignment of the stars
That's
and
right.
circumstances to make it happen again. Not another Desmond,
No.
but another groundbreaking whatever it is, and inspired by the success of Desmond's, because everything was aligned in perfect harmony for that to happen.
Yeah, I think
to
you-
start with
yeah.
your bus ride to Humphrey Barclay, you saw this thing, and okay, so that happened.
Yeah.
May not happen again,
That's true.
but it has to have it has to have the confidence of the person like yourself who's thinking, I've got something, I have found something, and this thing could possibly turn into a success. And then you have to have a Humphrey Barclay. You have to have someone who is prepared to put it on. And this is our next step, not to have someone create or accept another Desmond. We have to get to where Humphrey Barclay was. We have to be, that's our next move. Not to create another Desmond, but to create another production company, to create producers, and to create the people who employed us. Because bottom line is, we were employed by whatever. Now we have to be the people who are employing ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, interesting enough that the other thing that helped it was Michael Grade was a huge fan of Desmond's, and he'd just come back from America, where he was helming ABC at the time, and from the first script he said, well, actually from this first series, after I'd finished writing the first 6, he said to me, you know, I want this to get to syndication. So next series, I'm going to do something totally unheard of. We're going to go to 13 episodes of a sitcom, and not your usual 6 or 7. He was in a rush.
Yeah.
We would have made it had Norman, demise of Norman, and but yeah. So he was 110% behind it. Even issues like I said I wanted to do one about a gun in Peckham, right, and gangs, and we're talking 20 years ago, so and he said. And I said, look, this is a real crucial, for me, a real problem. So the guns in London? I said, yeah, guns in Peckham, yeah, and I really think that we should be highlighting that in a sitcom. You want to talk about guns in a sitcom? Not only that, I want it to be a 2-parter. I want it to have a cliffhanger. So I was summoned to Michael Gray. He sat me down and he said, okay, I want to see your eyes, Trix, so why do you want it? Because I said, because it's a youth, they're starting to use guns now. It's not even knives anymore, And do you think you can make it, make it work? Do you think you could make people laugh? So I told him the opening scene, and he went, yeah, okay, fine. But he trusted it. He really trusted it. So that, going back to what you're saying, Carmen, that alignment, the fact that we had people behind the scenes that really trusted what we were doing and let us do it.
You need things to come together.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the issue, right? Trix created something that he wanted you to see what we were about, right? And in order for that to work, you had to realise, actually, we ain't no different to you guys. Yeah. I mean, I'm there, as in you guys in the TV, are sitting there thinking, oh, you know what, they're different. Actually, they're no different. Oh my God, it's great. Wow, woo! And that's what it is. That's what you need. You now need to realise you don't need to create something. I always say it, look, Enders, Corrie, all of them, don't think, oh, you know what, we need to create a black family. We need to create don't create it. Just write anything and give us the job. We will make it what it is. Do you see what I mean? So that's what it is. They get so hung up on, it has to be this and it has to be that. And it don't have to be that, and it ain't. Just write it.
Because we're British after all. Do you know what I mean? That's the thing.
People.
And we're people.
That's
Right.
it.
So
That's
before I open it up to the crowd, I just
Please.
want to, let's talk about the great man himself, Norman Beaton, and what he brought to this show. Everything, obviously, but just some recollections of working with him and the presence and spirit that he had and that he brought to it, which you can see in every frame that he's in, is incredible.
Okay, my one is this, is that when we finally got to do the Cosby Show and Norman had to get a green card, he had to get various sponsors, and and they ranged from, you know, Larry Olivier at the time, who he worked with, so he had to be his wife. That's Glenda Jackson, the good and the great that came to write and say, yeah, you know, I've worked with this man. Then it struck me how awesome and how much work this man had done. What was great about Norman too is that he was a very, very intelligent guy, exceptionally intelligent. And not many people know that, you know. And so he really understood text. He used to ring me up and say, you know, Trix, come over and be mummy tonight. Come and talk me through this thing. What are you thinking? What are you... And then he used to quote, cross-reference Shakespeare to this, to Dickens, to everything. That, for me, was just, you know, the mark of a great man.
I'm glad you said that. I was going to say that. No, seriously, I knew Norman long before Desmond's. We are both from Guyana. Well, lots of us from Guyana.
Aye.
Not you.
For me.
You have to be odd. But I had experience of Norman and his work, and he started out as a teacher, and he had that same element all the way through his life. He saw things, he was able to create language. His brain worked like twice as fast as anybody else. It's more or less what you said. Exactly what I found in Norman Beaton, long before Desmond's. Brilliant man, very, very intelligent man. And you brought that.
I spent most of my time in the studios at Desmond's. So on the day we filmed, we'd do a dress run, rehearsal, and blah, blah, blah. And then we'd just, you know, be dinner break or something like that. I spent most of my years as Norman's gopher, right? Not for any particular reason, but I just wanted him to say something. I just literally wanted him to give me something. I was young. I was like, you know what, I've got the golden ticket. Just give me some words of wisdom. So on the days we were shooting, I'd make sure, you know, he had his little routine. I'd make sure I'd be in his dressing room before we, you know, were called for a dress run and stuff like that. And just, you know, making sure he was all right. And I never ever said it to him, but I only just wanted him to say something where I could go, because he had this thing. I can't even put a name to it. He had this thing. He was so good, right? But it wasn't bottled. It wasn't titled. It wasn't written. It was just something that he had. Yeah, and as soon as we went in front of that camera, mate, he turned it on, and it was like, and I always used to think, I want to know where he puts it. Is it in his room? And I did, and I literally, I just hung around him. I just wanted to know what it was, because I wanted it. I wanted him to give me that baton so I could go, right, I've got it. And he never gave him it.
Well,
No, he had.
yes, I met Norman in England, but we were supposed to have gone to school together, right at the same posse as we used to be, were as children in Georgetown. We had a lot of friends in common, but I never met him until in England, and I knew that he had his nickname. His nickname was Shakespeare. That's how bright he was at school, you know. And he was able to quote from a lot of Shakespeare's plays and so on. And he was very heavily into a lot of literature. You talk with Dickens, and he was into literature in a very serious way. Very well-read person. And as an actor, he was brilliant. The way he turned things on, and you know, he had his demons. He loved a tipple every now and then. I made a couple of tipples more than you or I would have, but yet it didn't seem to affect his performances. And so he was fine. It was a privilege to work with him. I worked with him apart from Desmond's a few times before, and it was marvelous to be working with him.
When I was at I went to National Film School, and one of the first things I was taught is that, and in terms of theatre too, which is where I started writing, is that, the moment you see somebody on the stage, or the screen, they have a history. So if every character that I write, I tend to write a whole biog on that character, even down to the language and how they speak. And with Desmond, I used to play all the characters and do it in the mirror, I'm a terrible actor, mind you, but just to get the rhythm, because the thing about the comedy for Desmond's was the fact that it was based on an American comedy in terms of like speed. Okay, it went at a lick, and the best American comedies found did that, and so I wanted to do that, and I also wanted the fact that as soon as you hear the characters, they came from something. They were speaking the voice that came from how they were at the time. So that was really important to me. So, but thank you for that.
We were just talking before about the confidence that you had with that first episode to take it out the blocks like that.
Yeah.
So every single character just seems totally three-dimensional straight away.
Yes.
And, can you just talk about like the
Well,
first?
yeah, I mean, the first one is, it's that thing of being given the platform and wanting to say so much at the same time. But what was important for me was that I was going to create a show that I couldn't be all things to all men. And I think once I dropped that mantle, I mean, I remember when I did for Queen and Country, even Robbie came up for an interview for that, and it looked like it was going to go to Gary Mack and end up with Denzel Washington, which wasn't, had nothing to do with me, but equally a number of people felt that was something to do with me.
This is Cockney Denzel.
This is Cockney, yeah, this is Cockney Denzel. But what's interesting was that because I felt that, it wasn't going to be all things to all men, then I can actually just be real with it. It was going to be the black show, but actually, as I said, we knew who we were. So all I wanted to do was to write something that was truthful, honest, and also show black people, in a way that wasn't the front page of the Sun, which is ultimately in that first episode, because all we ever saw was bad images and bad publicity about us, and we just completely branded. One black person, then suddenly all black people tarnished for the same thing. So, the process of writing characters, I always do, which is what I do, I start, so what are their likes, dislikes? What do they like to eat? What do they hate to eat? What's their language like? How big is their vocabulary? Etc. So I start from that. So it's a slow graph, but in the end, you end up with something a bit more real than normal. Totally, in one of the Desmond's experiences for me, that really just rocked my socks. The audience were exceptional when we were shooting Desmond's. So, how black people like to get involved in things, right? So, and so it became known in amongst the industry that when the episodes went out was whether that it was dub laughter, it was over the top, and whatever. And so to counter that, there was one episode when Norman was sitting there trying to think of some lyrics to describe Shirley, and because he had a few rhymes with pork pie, he couldn't think, Shirley, you're two, and he was going, oh, what's that pork pie? And then the audiences came out, girly, right, and started laughing. There's the first time, to the point that we actually kept it in the episode.
Shirley, you're my girlie. Your Tito White and your hair is curly.
Yeah. So, but the audience, preferred that rhyme, that very simple rhyme. But, and so that, to me, was the level of involvement and how much they loved the show, that they wanted to be part of it. And what was nice was that once we put that in, there was no discussion whatsoever about, was it dubbed because it sounds over the top? No, it's just people having a damn good time watching this comedy. That's what it was about.
It was so raucous for the first take. So I remember when we were doing it, it was so raucous and so loud for the first takes, we'd always have to do it again. But unfortunately, it was just as loud the second time round. No, but it was. I remember it was, and for Channel 4 at the time, it was just unheard of. You've got 300 people in the studio, properly tearing the house down, taking the roof off the place, and just messing up all the sounds. But, You know, there was
And
nothing
it
to
was
do.
black, white, pink, yellow, you know,
Yeah.
old and young, you know. So we had the Derby and Jones Club in, as well as the youth them and the man them from the ends, you know. So we had a complete spectrum of people who just got off on it, which is what, you know, that's what Robbie was saying, that actually it wasn't a black series, it was about people. It was just a series that happened to be black.
And with Robbie too, shout out to the real McCoy as well.
Yeah, innit?
And to Charlie Hanson, who was going to join us today but was off shooting, couldn't make it, was involved in both. And that was also live studio audience. And I've spoken to Charlie about, you know, the sound and the audience.
But I think you said we keep mentioning the word family. And I think, I mean, great sitcoms always circles are around family affairs. Usually many. You know, they have many other sitcoms set in hospitals, and you can have sitcoms set in space or whatever. But family, you see, this Ambrose family, this family, this whole community, and the family. You start with the family and you go out into then you introduce the rest of the community, which are part of the larger family, and it's all marvelous. I think Desmond had this format, so I don't say that it was a formulaic that Trix started out saying, it's going to be, we have to have it about a family, but it just maybe from this barber, it's just happened that this barber and his wife and the family were living on the premises, and so the community got involved, and that was a very, very important element and characteristic that allowed this comedy, this situation comedy, Desmond's, to be so marvelous and wide and extended.
And what about you
But
personally as an actor, and like what kind of inspired you in terms of the stuff that you would watch?
From the moment I received a script, my neighbors would hear me laughing, you know. and the fun we've had in rehearsals, my God, we're falling about. I mean, this was hilarious. And the thing when we came to recording, we couldn't enjoy, we couldn't cause. We have to be playing it for real, you know. We had to be straight, but we had our laughs in rehearsal, and we had to keep it straight. But we're playing it for real. But what was the question?
It's good to know that. It must be good for you to hear all this, because this is your material.
Well, yes, I'm inspired by not necessarily the performance of other artists, but by the fact that there are other artists who are in the struggle, as it were, because most of life is a struggle. Everybody's trying to get somewhere or to do something that gives them some satisfaction, and how come lifts their own humanity. Because apart from being on the stage or on television, there's a me that's living on this planet amongst other people, and I am sustained by people I know who are moving within the society and in the global sense even, to make things happen, whether it's on stage or television or writer or whatever. I'm involved in many projects and have been in the past. And that's what kept me. I never felt, I knew that I was out of work, and a lot of people were out of work, and a lot of people were struggling. But I always found myself working with other forces in society that were creating a better life either for themselves or for other people. Let me say now that I was actually, I can say this now. I was actually one of the members of the ANC Women's League. That's the kind of thing that I was involved in across the board. So that I always felt that I was I'm in the struggle, and my contribution as an artist is just one area of that struggle. And that is what sustains me. When I see what other people are doing and that what I can be involved in the movement to improve humanity, bottom line.
All right. Well, that's hard to follow, and you know. But my inspiration, people, first and foremost. You know, I'm a people watcher. I don't think I'd do my job if I wasn't really. And no matter what you put human beings through or in, there is something within us that actually just pushes forward or pushes back. And also, we're also unique, you know. But at the same time, we're the same. And so, Maya Angelou always said that as writers, most writers have one theme, you know. So if you go to, you know, an easy example of that is Stephen King, you know. So he writes horror, you know. But she always says that black writers have two themes. And mine's always about, my first theme, first and foremost, is always about equality, man, you know. And my second theme is about just people getting on, you know. And races, class, creeds, we need to know each other. We need to stick together. We need to be and feel each other. In a world that's actually going so far to the right, and we swore we wouldn't get into Trump, people are still my inspiration because no matter what is put in front of them, they somehow seem to mount that wall.
What you say about people getting on,
Yeah.
it sounds, you know, sometimes it can sound a bit like, oh, you know,
Yeah,
too
yeah.
easy. But I live in the States, and I had to present, I was back here, I had to present a film called No Way Out, starring Sidney Poitier. It was the first time he'd ever been in a motion picture. And in the film, a white racist with crazy blonde hair tries to destroy him, this dignified black man. And this happened the day after the election. I hadn't slept. And it was the hardest presentation I've ever had to do. A couple of days after that, I watched a film called Jemima and Johnny. Does anybody know it? From 1966 by a former ANC guy, Lionel Nkani, South African director.
Nkani.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
And this is a film, it's what, 20 minutes long? Young white child and a little black girl in East London in the 60s or whatever, just running around playing together. The family of the daughter have just moved from the West Indies, and the dad is a white nationalist. And the whole film is, I think it's pretty much silent, and it's just the two of them. And I watched this, and I cried for hours after that.
Wow.
Because it was just so simple about getting on.
Yeah.
You know, I just like
And
to
it's
add
what a
to
theme
what,
to want to pick up on.
Yeah.
I'd just like to add to what Trix and Carmen said, that, in answer, maybe this answers your question as well. That many years ago, Joan Baez, the folk singer, said that she is a social worker, and the music, her musical folk music, is the medium through which she achieves the social work. And I quoted her, it was in the Times, in 1965 or 66. Yeah, so that's, so I'm a social worker, and the art is the medium through which I work. Yeah, I think that's...
Cool.
Do you wanna-
Robbie.
No. I literally can't top that. Very similar. I ain't never been a social worker.
Go on, Robbie.
But strangely enough, to answer your question, young lady, it would have been a great link. My hero, Sidney Poitier. Yeah? Heat of the Night, Rod Steiger, loved it. Two people, Sidney Poitier and Hugh Kouachi. Two great actors. One I absolutely love, would love to have been in something with him. The other one is great, and he's got hair. I mean hair, right? Hugh, I saw Hugh in Great White Hope many years ago when I was a normal body, as I said. And to be on a stage, to do what he did. Now, when I see him, I've done the whole bit a few times. When I see, I've never told Hugh this, and don't tell him nothing. Right?
It's not being recorded or anything.
Exactly.
No, not much.
Mate, he's just, and he's so cool. He's not up himself. He's cool. He's proper. Hugh is Hugh. He is sexy. He is good looking, and he's still got hair. But he's just great. He's just great, and he's just so chilled about it. But as Trix said, I watch people. If I could credit the amount of people that I've put and crowbarred into something that I've done on the TV, mate, just the little things that you guys do that I watch and I say, you know what, put it into the character and stuff like that, that's what makes me pretending to be you guys, you know, it makes that special for me.
I think, what's interesting about Channel 4, because I was there right from the offset when, the various production companies like Sankofa and Isaac and all those guys, and John Comfrey and their production company were doing documentaries and drama for Channel 4 because, as you said, it was set up to do that. It seems that Channel 4 is so far removed from that now, that it hasn't followed through with its remit to do that. That it actually has its own kind of branding now because it's positioning itself to be on the free market because actually Channel 4 will be up for sale soon. I mean, that's the sort of collective thinking about it now.
But has it not just had to change with the times?
I think, possibly. But I think one of the things that is difficult is that there is a oneness in this country that if you do the thing once, then everybody goes, well, that's it, it's done. But actually, it's called an industry, and you're supposed to nurture and help and develop, and that just doesn't happen. They give you, like, for instance, when I won that writers' competition, the thing was this, that they didn't want to shoot it. They didn't want to make it as a film. And I was thinking, well, what the rah? Here is a writers' competition for a television series, for a television station, and you can't put it on. So I just threatened them to go with the press with it. And their response was that single dramas cost so much money. And I said, well, actually, if you're not, why hold a writers' competition if you're not going to show the thing? And for me, that has been quintessentially my problem throughout, as a metaphor for it all. That, it is risk. It's embracing risk, and if we can't have a channel that we think that we could, would help us or embrace newness or a different voice, then where do we stand? Because ultimately what we're doing is, it's the same voices, In America, I lived in America for a bit and I had a production film company out there for years, and, how they see England is this, quaint, antiquated look, give us more Downton, we want to see costume drama. It's branding. That's how they see brand England, And so where are the fresh young voices? Where is this glorious melting pot that is London and the various metropolitan boroughs? Why aren't we reflected now? I don't see it.
There's an element of the one-off that's going to. It's in every company does it, not only television or in the arts. There's the thing that's going to sell the company as whatever it's supposed, whatever the franchise or whatever they have, whatever they're meant to be doing, remit, and then they do this thing, and but there's no follow-up.
No, they pat you on the back and tell you to go away and don't do that again.
Exactly. I mean, it's not that I want you, the company, to employ me again in something else. I think that I'm thinking more widely than just employing me again. But let me see that you're doing what you've been asked to do, and what my job that you gave me has created, so that you are able to follow up with something else or to do what you said you were going to do. You've got the money, you've been given the franchise, you've been given all this thing, and you put on this program. Lucky for Channel 4 that it was that successful, because they're still living on it.
Well, thank you for that. And it's a good time to say that I hope Black Star itself is not the end of something, but the start of something, and the start of many things. And it's been a real highlight of the programme to have all of you here today, personally, as well as for everyone in here, I hope. And you've done something very significant, and it has stood the test of time. And I'd like the audience to give a big round of applause. Oh, hang on.
Just before you say that bit. Just before you say that, on behalf of Ram, Carmen, Trix, and myself, I would like to say thank you to you guys for coming out, for showing your love, showing your support over the years, being followers, because we didn't know, it was going to stand the test of time. We didn't know that there was going to be a gaping hole 20-odd years later. Huh? You did. But... Thank you for following it. Thank you for loving it. Thank you for showing them that it was worthwhile. So, I want to thank you guys. Thank you.